Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sam's Report. It is early November here. Early November. We are rocking and rolling. It's a big day. Big day. Xbox One X, which I don't have. uh, Paul has it for the site, and I didn't really feel like hunting one down. And so I'm still running on the S. And back here, you can't see it, is the new Call of Duty. The new Call of Duty. Right there, you can't see, is the repaired Xbox One X controller. You can see this little flap here, but I straight up glued it all back together because the rest of the controller's fine. You can see it's a little lumpy there, probably from my death grips of screaming at people on the internet for killing me. But it's still it's holding on. It feels a lot like a 1998 Chevy Cavalier where everything's just kind of, it works, but it's no longer pretty, right? So I glued this thing, all the rubber padding back together, and I don't know if I'm going to buy a new one of those or not. I still think there's an Elite controller 2 coming at some point, but it seems like it was delayed quite a bit with the X because I don't think they wanted to launch the X, a $500 console, and then another $150 controller. We'll see if that ever materializes. I know they were building it at one point. But welcome back, everybody, and hopefully this show will go a little bit better than last week because last week I forgot to do a local recording, and then everything kind of fell apart, and my whole life fell apart. And my whole life, I mean my computer. So the AMD Ryzen machine, which was, it's now a distant memory. Actually, you can't see it. The whole machine is sitting right up here. I'm back on my Intel machine, and it's no fault of AMD and or Ryzen. I believe, and I'm waiting to get. I think I'm going to RMA this whole machine. I believe it was the power supply. I think is what it's come down to. I think that's what it is because, well, let me put it this way: the machine won't turn on. If you're familiar, it won't turn on. I came down one morning, I'm drinking my morning energy juice, hit the power button, and I got nothing. After many swearing things, I checked for shorts, I checked for everything. I think this is just, I think the power supply is dead. There's a potential it could be the motherboard. Typically when you plug in the power on a power supply with a motherboard that has LEDs or any sort of indicator lights, it does what's called a chirp, where it kind of just, it chirps, like it's like, hey, there's power connected. Not necessarily turns on, but just says, hey, there is power to the board being energized, and I'm getting none of that. And I've looked, and I've looked, and I've looked, and after spending about a day trying to troubleshoot, at that point, I'm like, you know what, I'm so far behind on everything else I need to write and do, that I said, all right, it's kind of time to throw in the flag. So I had to pull out the video card, which, God, this thing is beautiful and very heavy. This is the 1080 Ti Founders Edition. Not that that really matters, but that card is out. I'm assuming that I'm going to mail all this stuff back, and you don't want to mail that heavy card. That thing probably weighs like 7-8 pounds, and that thing flexing on the motherboard would not be a good scenario. So I'm waiting to see what they want to do. But yeah, real sad because that thing kicked ass, man. It was very quick, much quicker than this machine I'm on. Even right now, looking at it, I'm using 48% of the CPU capacity just doing this live stream. And I'm not even playing a game. Not even playing a game. So this is rocking at 1080p. It says 60 frames per second. I'm not sure if I believe that from this Logitech camera. But yeah, so we're floating about half usage, about 70% of my RAM. It really eats the stuff up. So having that extra capacity, I could quite literally tell a difference. So Todd says you can short a couple pins on the power supply connector to trick it into powering it up to see if there's any voltage on the pins. The GPU usage of the video X always killed it for me. Yeah, I don't want to die though. I'm pretty dumb when it comes to electricity, and I've shocked the hell out of myself a few times. And this is one of those things that this isn't my hardware, and so I'd prefer not to totally annihilate it to see what was going on. And as Greg points out, it says, yeah, it is always handy to have a spare power supply. So technically, I do. Problem is that it's in this machine that I'm using, and as I was doing all this, my wife is like, you better not take that power supply to your old computer because then if you kill that one, you're gonna have no computers. And I was like, yes, that's totally reasonable. And so then I just started contacting support and see what we'll do. But yeah, thanks, Todd. Appreciate the help about you wanting me to be dead and suffering. But anyways, folks, kind of a quiet week in the Microsoft world, kind of not. Obviously, the Xbox One X reviews are out. I think I've read every single one, and they all say, hey, it's pretty good. I don't think anybody was really expecting anything different, to be honest. Like, Microsoft seemed overly confident with this machine before it came out. Like, they were showing it off the Digital Foundry. They had it everywhere. It's not like they were trying to like hide this thing back and be like, oh, shit, I hope they don't find something wrong with it. They seem pretty confident with this thing, and the reviews reflect that. They say, hey, it's a better gaming experience. It's $500. You have to decide if $500 is worth that much better gaming experience. That is up to you. But here we are. I canceled my pre-order, not because I don't want one, mostly because my furnace is about to die. My garage door broke, and I just got piled on, man. I got piled on with like a whole bunch of crappy, stupid house expenses. But anyways, moving on. Go read all that stuff. Paul wrote up a good post about it. Everybody is saying good things about it. I think Microsoft is going to have another good hit on their hands. I think it's going to be it's going to sell in some volume initially. But I mean, for example, Call of Duty right back here. You don't need the Xbox One X to play it. Now, I will tell you that it does kind of look like crap. I've been PC gaming for quite a while with the other machine, a couple weeks now, PUBG. And I looked at this and I was like, Jesus, man, like 30 frames per second really does kind of suck once you've had, when I was playing PUBG, it was like over 100. And so going back to that, it's like, So that would be the thing that would push me over. But Call of Duty, pretty good game so far. You know, it's back to the basics. I'm happy about that. That's the reason why I bought $60 on it spent $60 on it last night. No wall jumping, none of that crap, just kind of run and gun. I will tell you, it does seem like SMGs are the way to go, at least so far. We'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But, go read this stuff. Go read that. You know, good job, Microsoft. Good job. All right, a couple other things that happened in the Microsoft world this week is an Edge preview. So Edge on iOS getting an update. I expect these updates to come pretty quickly because they're not engine related. They're all kind of on the top level, right? They're all user features. It's not like they're trying to update the game engine. I'm like in total game mode. And I'm going to be that way all day. But it's all top level, just consumer features. And so that is now out if you're in the preview program. Speaking of PUBG, by the way, it's coming to the Xbox One. We already knew that, but now we have a date of December 12th. And Microsoft had the worst live stream, I shouldn't say the worst, pretty close to the worst live stream event for that. So they did it on Mixer. I think it was on Twitch, but I was watching on Mixer because, you know, I'd like to see Microsoft's platforms do something for once. And so I'm watching on Mixer, and they had no audio, but I think that was just universal. They had no audio for Aaron Greenberg, and so they gave him another mic, still had no audio. And then they were doing an interview, and it's not like they were waiting to get this stuff figured out. They just plowed forward. And so the PUBG guys were like answering questions that you could hear. You could hear the responses, but you never heard the questions from Aaron, blah, blah, blah. And then they said they had a special trailer for PUBG for Xbox. And what it was the E3 trailer. And then at the very end, they just like basically just put up a splash screen that says on December 12th, it's coming. But anyways, it is coming December 12th. I'm going to be very curious to see how this plays out. I know it's pretty intensive on the PC because it's like 100-person servers and all that good stuff. I'll be curious about frame rate and everything else. But yeah, so we've got that going on December 12th. $30. I think it's well worth $30. There's no campaign. It's just battle royale, run around. It's kind of choose your own adventure. Like if you want to fight a whole bunch of people, you just jump out of the airplane when everyone else does. If you want to kind of run around and I don't know, Red Riding Hood through the forest, you can totally do that. Just jump out when no one else is. So that is coming December 12th. Other things about dying, because that's what I always do in online video games. Microsoft is killing Outlook.com Premium. They're not really killing it, but what they're really doing is they're folding all of it into Office 365, which is a good thing for those people that are paying. But if you are on a custom domain for Outlook.com Premium, they are going to continue to support that. So it seems a little odd that they would continue to support just that scenario for those users, because it has to be a small user group. I mean, if it was massive, like acceptance of this product, you'd think they would have kept it by themselves. I suspect they're probably going to offload that to a third party here at some point. But if you were gunning for Outlook.com Premium and you were sitting on the fence about it, you're kind of out of luck now at this point, unfortunately. What is OneNote doing? Like, you know, like OneNote's usually so good. Scroll. Thank you. There we go. Other things announced this week. Definitely check out the Surface LTE. It's coming soon. And it's got 450 megabytes per second LTE capability. You will never get that, but really what it has is LTE Advanced. So you will get faster speeds than traditional LTE, but you're never going to get that 450 like they're saying. And we got a lot of questions about why it's not coming to the laptop or the Surface Book. I think that's pretty easy to answer. People who are buying the Surface LTE, I know this isn't an all-encompassing statement, but it's pretty, I think it's pretty representative of where the volume for this device comes from. Most Surface LTE purchases are going to come from the corporate world. It's just the way it is because they're going to pay for that LTE. They want this type of devices for their users, and so the Surface Pro is primarily, I should say, is sold much heavier in volume compared to the laptop or book in the enterprise. So that's why we're seeing it on the Pro. That's not to say it won't come to the other products because they all do use a very similar PCB and they could probably shoehorn that into just about anything at this point. But that's why it's only on the Pro right now because the enterprise is buying Pro. That is an absolute true statement. Everybody that I talked to that is in the enterprise that is buying Surface hardware, they are buying Pros for their user, and that's just kind of the way it works. So, other things that are now going on sale, and I don't know why you'd buy this, but Verizon is now selling an HP Elite X3. So if you're on Verizon and you really wanted that Elite X3, you can now go do that on Verizon, although you're buying a phone that doesn't have a future in the software world. But if you want the best available Windows mobile hardware, you can now do that on Verizon, but just know that you're buying a product that already has its end of life written in stone. So, something else I wrote up this week, but if you're a frequent watcher of the podcast, you probably already knew this, and if you haven't, go back and watch, I think it was 2 weeks ago, where I was talking about the Andromeda device. I finally wrote it up because I'm getting more and more confident that this thing does exist. Whether or not it will ship, that I can't exactly tell you, but I can tell you that it does exist in some capacity, so it's externally referred to as Andromeda. Andromeda. I don't know if that's internally what they call it, but this is basically the foldable device. And basically, the newest thing that I've heard is that Microsoft is now pushing their UWP apps to be built for side-by-side displays like this. And so that's kind of the latest step. Obviously, they get the hardware, and now they need the software, and that's kind of where that's going. But the thing that can confuse a lot of people, and myself included, which is what makes some of these rumors hard, is that Andromeda is also a software component as well. I've seen screenshots calling things Andromeda, and so don't get overly crazy when you hear certain things about Andromeda's coming, because that very well could mean the software side. The hardware is not coming in 2017. It might come in 2018, but I don't think Microsoft knows exactly yet. And so they're going to wait until they get this thing right, and then we will go from there. But just kind of keep that in mind. Microsoft also this week in Seattle, I was actually supposed to go to this, but then I turned it down last minute because I didn't really want to go to Seattle. But they're having what's called a PASS Summit, and it's all about SQL and all that good stuff. And so they announced a couple things this week, and I wrote it up on Petri, and it got a crazy amount of traffic. I always kind of forget that there's this real quiet mass majority that loves this enterprise software and stuff. And so Microsoft has a new tool coming that's going to help you make your SQL databases faster, and they're giving it away for free. It's called SQL Operations Studio. They showed off a sneak peek of it, and it'll be coming in the coming weeks or potentially months. But basically, it's free software, and it runs on Windows, it runs on Mac, and it runs on Linux. I'm curious if this is what they're using to actually run this, if it's like a progressive web app type thing. But whatever it is, this is coming. It'll be free. It'll analyze your SQL databases and tell you where the bottlenecks are and how to fix them. Yeah, kind of hard not to like that. And then they also announced a new offer this week that if you're running Oracle, Amazon Redshift, or any of the IBM databases, there's a new tool that they're offering for free, and it's with a third party, I think a Tunity or something like that. But it's backed by Microsoft. That's all you need to know about. And they're giving you a free license for a year. And this software basically, now these are their words, are claiming that, hey, this makes migrating from any of these databases over to Microsoft SQL or comparable platform simple, right? It's got a nice GUI interface. You just kind of drag stuff around, you hit go, and then it'll convert your database over. Obviously, you need to try this out and test databases. Don't just go run this on production. But they're claiming that this significantly reduced the amount of time and cost to actually shift databases, because there's an old saying that says, choose your database once because you'll never choose again. And basically goes back to the fact that, hey, it's very timely and expensive to migrate. But with a lot of companies being on-prem today and going to cloud, that's a natural time to think about shifting your database. And so Microsoft is putting everything they can to get people on competitive platforms over to their software. And they can be real aggressive these days, unlike they could in the late 90s, where they were getting smacked all the time by the EU and all those good people. And so, yeah. So as Thapa asks in the chat room, he says, will the SQL 2 work on older SQL servers? I don't think so. I think it has to be the latest iterations. I know it works with Azure SQL Server, and it does work with on-prem, but I think it has to be the latest version of on-prem to get that full benefit out of it. Yeah, so you've got that coming. You've got that coming. Unfortunately, I don't know if they're going to make it available to older stuff. I asked, and they kind of gave me like this wishy-washy answer. I don't know if it's some sort of thing that's in the program itself that it ties into, but it's pretty neat. I mean, I don't know. Microsoft is getting real aggressive in this, mostly because they can, and they know they have to. And Azure is doing exceptionally well for Microsoft. $20 billion run rate, it's kind of a made-up thing, but it does show that there is solid growth in Azure and the platforms and the cloud services. And that's how Microsoft is going to survive for the next generation. Whether or not that has a consumer component to it, other than Windows on the desktop and Surface hardware, and maybe Xbox, I don't really know. But at least they're going to be around in the enterprise play for a very, very long time. Other things that are out this week, I know we talked about the X a little bit, but also the iPhone X reviews are now out. Actually, the iPhone X is now shipping. And so if you ordered one of those, congratulations. Good luck and have fun with it. I did not personally. I think I've said it a million times. I'm holding out for a fingerprint reader, but it seems like the facial stuff is working out all right. Some of the reviewers that Apple feeds this stuff to are a little overly positive about how great it is and how it's revolutionary. I want to see like the layman's reviews and the support forums and all that good stuff, because that's where the true story comes out. And everybody's biased to some degree. They either like things or they don't, but it's when you hit mass volume and critical mass of this stuff that you truly see some of the issues. Other fun things happening in the world, smartphones. Google's Pixel 2 XL units. We thought it was kind of the worst was over with screen burn-in and poor color reproduction, which the color reproduction they can fix. They can't fix the brightness. But apparently some Pixel 2 XL units are shipping without an OS. Google just kind of getting beat over the head with this one. This is it's not quite as bad as the Note 7 that was literally blowing up and you're getting on an airplane and that stewardess is telling you, hey, you can't use your Note 7 on this plane. But I think Google wishes they could get a do-over on this, but here we are. And so, been kind of a quiet week in the world of Microsoft. We're heading up into, next week's not so close. I was going to say we're getting a little close to like the holiday time around Thanksgiving when things quiet down. We're probably going to start to see a lot of sales coming on soon, I would actually very much imagine. I bet we're going to start to see, I don't know if we'll see any Xbox One X bundles this year. I bet they'll start showing up early next year, more so than what they're already offering, because we are quickly, very fast approaching the holiday shopping season. We got Black Friday. What the heck was that noise? If I just suddenly disappear or whatever, there's somebody breaking into my house. Maybe there's a package being dropped off. Actually, I can almost guarantee that what it was. Nobody heard a doorbell, right? Because FedEx and UPS don't do that anymore in my house, even though I'm home all the time. Home all the time. So we got that going on. But like I said, not a crazy busy week in the world of Microsoft, which is fine. Next 2 weeks, actually, I take that back. They've got their Connect thing in New York here in 2 weeks. I got invited to it. I don't know if I'm going to go yet. I haven't decided yet. It's Microsoft Connect. It's kind of like a mini build, but in this time of the year. And so it takes place in New York about 2 weeks or so. So they've got that. There's definitely going to be news that comes out of that event. That there's no doubt about it. But why don't we dive into the questions for this week? Whoa, almost closed it down. Handful of them. Merc Blue 281 says, question, how could one use an Android-based phone without supplying Google any data? If we face a future without Windows, I would hope that there's a way to use some reasonably priced hardware without permitting Google using any of my data. Should I start cutting checks to the individuals who use these servers? I might reconsider. I don't want them using my info or my family's, to print money for themselves. So this is a really good and hard question. Because if you want to use Android, you basically have to kind of abide by Google's terms. You can opt out as many things as you want, but to get access to apps in the Google Play Store, you're kind of at the mercy of some of these developers. And this may not be the answer that you're looking for, but if you truly don't want to give Google anything, buy an Apple device. I I know that's probably not the answer you're looking for, and you don't have to buy an iPhone X that's $1,000. Go buy an iPhone 5 SE. Go grab an iPhone 7. They're reasonably priced at this point. An iPhone 7 is what I use as my daily driver. But that's going to be your best thing to keep your data out of Google's hands. While Apple is by any means a saint, they are far from perfect. I don't believe that they use your data in nearly the same way that Google does. So if that's your concern, is data and Google basically stealing all that, not stealing, but selling all that information, I would honestly just jump over to iOS. You're going to have a better experience, and you won't have to worry about that. And it's going to put you, to some extent, an air gap between yourself and Google. When you're using their OS and you're using their store, and you're downloading their apps, you're at their mercy. That's about what the best you can do, unfortunately. Somebody recommended that you could sideload all your apps. That is certainly an option too, but at that point you're getting into such a minute lifestyle that every time you want to download an app or whatever, you gotta remember all it takes is one accidental click, and then they suck all that data up into their profile of you. And so just be careful of that. Rusterick asks, now that they've gotten rid of the Kinect, what do streamers do if they want to use a camera for streaming? Are they going to release a standalone camera, or will a Logitech cam work? I believe, I have to double check on this, that they're going to start offering support for third-party cameras. I thought the Logitech cameras were going to be supported for that exact scenario. So double check into that. I remember that off the top of my head from Major Nelson saying that, because I was actually interested in doing that so that I could stream like Call of Duty and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I would definitely check that out. Definitely would check that out. Poncelia says, RS4 is apparently going to support progressive web apps. Yes, we do know that. If Windows 10 Mobile supports PWA, does that effectively solve the app gap? So here's a couple things. I got a bunch of questions about Redstone 4. It says, hey, where's Microsoft in announcing all their features? Last time, but this year we knew all of them. Well, Microsoft got bit several times. We got My People, we got Timeline, we've got Cloud Clipboard, and all that other good stuff. And so Microsoft isn't talking about Redstone 4 features until they know that they can actually hit their deadlines. So I wouldn't expect to see anything about that until early next year, is when we'll probably start to see some of that stuff. A lot of engineers typically take off time in December. I remember saying that last year, and then it was actually a real busy time. But Microsoft isn't going to announce these features so far ahead, at least for Redstone 4, because they've got to catch up on Timeline and all this other stuff. So, yeah. Now, the question is, does it solve the app gap? Let me put it this way. It doesn't hurt the app gap by any means. The big question is how long is it going to take the big companies to move from localized apps to progressive web apps? Don't get me wrong. I am all in favor of progressive web apps. I think that they are a much better option and solution for developers because it's very close to the right once run everywhere. It's getting closer to that model that Microsoft tried to chase with UWP. And so progressive web apps are universally supported. Chrome does it. Edge does it. Firefox does it. Windows 10 is going to support them natively. That is the future. Now, the question becomes with this Andromeda hardware, if they can get these progressive web apps to work, if they can get these apps to work, yeah, then it's going to be a big thing. So that very well could be. I'm watching this progressive web app stuff closely because this is Microsoft's best bet at getting a fully built-out app store. And don't forget that they already announced that they're going to bring progressive web apps to the Microsoft Store on Windows 10. So Microsoft is all in on progressive web apps. They see this as a path to recovering in this scenario. And so what I'm hoping is that, like, the scenario that I see hoping out, like, you know, if we're fantasizing you for a minute, is that Microsoft gets real aggressive with progressive web apps, and so do developers. And then Microsoft can launch hardware that is optimized for progressive web app experiences, and that can be the Andromeda device, and Microsoft can kind of then stand a chance in that arena. That's what I'm really hoping to see here. So, the next question actually comes in from the chat room. Actually, and I forgot that I put this in the show notes. Microsoft actually launched Microsoft launched Microsoft 365 Business this week. I forgot they didn't really launch it. It came out of preview, so it's not generally available. And by generally available, I mean U.S., Canada, and the U.K. But this is actually a big deal for Microsoft. We've gotten a lot of questions through the Petri channel asking about Microsoft 365. What is it? How's it going to work? Is it a good deal? And so, super high level look, Microsoft 365, depending on the SKU, is basically Office 365 plus either some IT security components or IT security components and Windows. So basically, it's one subscription service, and you get a lot of the Microsoft products. It's designed to make your subscriptions easier to manage, and it also comes with all the stuff you need for productivity, including invoicing and planning and billing and all that good stuff. And so, yeah, it's now generally available only for companies up to 300 users. That's Microsoft 365 Business is in general availability. Microsoft 365 Enterprise, per my understanding, is not yet. And Enterprise is obviously the Microsoft 365 version for Enterprise. And so here we are. And that is not quite available. But I am actually somewhat excited about this because obviously for Microsoft's resellers, which sell Azure and all that stuff, and Office 365, this is a new SKU that can begin offering. And again, this is Microsoft getting aggressive, helping things out, and making life, in theory, easier because they can take over some of your IT controls and security, and, put security in Microsoft's hands because they're obviously going to have to do a very good job. At least they're going to try to do a very good job, and they have a lot of experience. But Microsoft 365 Business for up to companies with 300 users now available, if that's your cup of tea, if you're in the US, UK, or Canada. I don't know why it's not available elsewhere, but that's Microsoft for you. And then Merlin E. asks, he says, with web apps becoming the right ones to deploy everywhere, will Microsoft kill and write off Xamarin next? No, they're not going to write off Xamarin anytime soon. Don't get me wrong. Progressive web apps are great, and I have a lot of hope for their future. This is not going to be an overnight adventure for developers. This is going to take years, and there are still going to be reasons why you want localized native apps, and so Xamarin will, I think, have a place. I do think Xamarin was a good purchase for Microsoft. It keeps them relevant in the mobile development space because if they didn't have that and didn't have that capability, then people would move to other platforms and then eventually build progressive web apps for using other platforms. And so Xamarin was a very good sort of middle ground to keeping developers happy inside the Microsoft ecosystem. So I don't think they're going to write off Xamarin anytime soon, anytime soon. And so, yeah, a couple other fun things. When I lost my machine earlier this week, I also lost. So if you notice that when I switched cameras, like usually it does it's called a lower third where it pops up and did a nice and neat little animation and says like my name, my title, and all that other stuff that nobody cares about. I lost that. I lost that little video because it was on a hard drive that then crashed, and then I formatted it and I didn't realize it. And bad example of backup. I didn't lose everything. I still have the intro video and all that good stuff, but I'm probably going to recreate that. I may recreate another intro video or at least an outro video. I got to get Adobe Illustrator back on, or After Effects back on my machine, and so that I can do all that. But there we go, guys. Like I said, relatively quiet week, but another fun week. I guess this was more of an enterprise week. You had Microsoft 365. You had a whole bunch of SQL stuff. Yeah, and as Todd points out, because Todd is a consistent pain in my butt, I've known Todd for a couple years, and he writes for me, not enough, but on occasion on Petri.com, and he does some SharePoint stuff. But he says, if there's only this cloud thing you can back up your files to, you should check it out. He's exactly right. I didn't have that one particular file backed up. I had everything else backed up, but not the one freaking thing that's really hard to recreate without downloading all that software again. So yes, Todd is correct, which, yep. So, as always, guys, we're going to wrap it up here. And as always, guys, I very much appreciate everybody tuning in, and hopefully this video downloaded and saved locally, because last week I screwed it up and didn't have a local copy, and that's why it looks so terrible. But I'll keep you guys updated on the Ryzen machine, and if you're playing Call of Duty, you can definitely check it out. I'll be online a lot. BD Sam's, exact same thing as my Twitter handle, and you can come die with me. I die a lot. A lot. So, cool, guys. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. And the insider tip of the week, this one hits a little close to home. A good friend of mine is battling, well, actually, I think she might be beating cancer now at this point. I think it's fair to say. Cancer sucks. Keep yourself healthy, and rock on, guys. Catch you next week.